Live. Hey there.
Hello hey there, and welcome to Bajaao.com. We're here at our Bajaao Studios in Bombay, and it's a great pleasure that we have along with us Mr. Michael Adams from Waves audio plugins. A lot of us use Waves plugins and all kinds of plugins, and today is a great opportunity for us to learn from one of the best. Someone who's used Waves plugins and taught people and educated a lot of people out there. So we're pretty excited to be able to get that knowledge ourselves here. So without any further ado, we've got Michael Adams, and take it away, Michael.
No. You don't get out of that this
Oh.
easily. So let's talk for a second. So
Sure.
hi everybody. My name is Michael. You can call me MPA. I am from Waves. Now let's talk about you guys for a second because you're the guys who brought me in. So for anybody who doesn't know about you, let's talk about you for a second.
Sure.
Go on.
For all the viewers who are watching on the Bajao channel, they probably know us. We've been around since about 2007. We're one of India's largest online retailers. We're one of the few places that you could actually buy plugins officially in India for
Nice.
Waves too. Uh, we kind of help out musicians because I am a musician. Most of
Right.
our founding members are musicians. Most of the employees here are musicians. So post this session too, if anybody has any questions, we've got trained employees who will be watching this, who will be trained separately as well, who will be able to help out and suggest better options of gear, plugins, whatever you may have. So we're here to help. And yeah, anything else?
Well, okay. So what's I because I like interviewing when I get the
Sure,
chance.
sure.
So what's your favorite Waves plugin?
Oh, as a singer, I've used CLA plugins for a while, the CLA vocal plugins.
Cool.
Those are one of my favorites. I think those are like just as easy to use as possible. The presets there just make things easy. And again, for most of the production work for my own music, for my band's music, I've had
Right.
other people do it. But when I'm doing things at home while making demos or just scratch tracks, those are just the simplest things to use because I don't really want to break my head about EQs and compressions too much. One plugin, a couple of presets to try
Right.
out which
Yeah.
sounds best,
No.
just EQ it a little bit. It just adds some effects, and it's all there in that vocal plugin right there. So
So we
I
are.
really love
So
it.
I'm actually using a CLA plugin today. It's not
Uh,
the vocal plugin, but it is a CLA plugin. So what I kind of figured, and this conversation that you're having and what you just told me then, that's actually kind of where we're going with today. We're talking about workflow and problem solving. So the
mhm.
the the session which I'm going to be taking you and your friends out there through is actually a session. I think I was telling you a few minutes ago offline. I actually recorded this session in 1997, and I recorded it in a living room in a house which had glass on three sides with no acoustic paneling. It was a Rode microphone. It was Pro Tools that I used, but it was one of the original DigiDesign Audio Media 3 cards, like the little PCIe
Oh,
cards
good, yeah.
that they used to
Mhm.
make. And the computer was like an Apple Mac beige G3. It was which is before most of you people out there were born, probably. I mean, how old were you? You were like 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was exactly 10,
All right.
97.
All right. So should we jump into this?
Yep.
All right.
Can't wait.
So you can pop in anytime, my friend. Your voice will be in and around. So if you talk to me again right now, I'm on full camera, but if you talk to me, you should still be there.
Yep.
There
Can
you
hear you.
go. Okay, cool. So hi everybody. My name is Michael Adams. Most people do call me MPA. I'm the Director of Training and Development for Waves Audio. I've been at Waves now since 2006. I'm also a professional working mix engineer and recording engineer, and I've been doing that since I was 16. I am Australian, however, I do live in Florida in the States. And I still have a studio in Australia, but I also have this studio here, which is now also become like a live streaming studio. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about a couple of things which, especially if you are starting out, are things which are the first things I like to talk about and the first things I like to guide people through. And I'm fairly positive, guys, we're going to be doing a few of these. So this is, you could call this chapter 1. I'm going to go through a session, which, as I said, I recorded in 1997, which I don't even want to know how old some of you were. I'm assuming some of you might not have even been born. Makes me feel old. Okay. Now, when I recorded this session, I recorded it in Pro Tools. I still use Pro Tools, but for purposes like just mixing now, I choose a different DAW. I generally choose this one, Studio One. Personal preference. Everything I show you today is going to be pretty much applicable to everything. It's just a workflow and its in its concepts, and it's keeping things not overwhelming. So, as I said, we recorded this 1997. I recorded it in a room that was not acoustically treated. I recorded this on a microphone that was not amazing, but it was a good microphone. I still own it. It's in the closet behind me. And one of the only things that saved this song initially was the fact that the singer is incredibly talented, but the recording of her was not good. So this is a perfect example as far as a session of how to fix things. Now, I'm going to press play on this session, and you'll see that there's no plugins actually in right now. All the plugins are out. I'm going to press play, and it sounds a bit messy. Here we go. Wait for it.
Bass.
Okay, so let's just go through it a bit more so you get an idea. I'll use this as time to take a sip of my coffee.
Piano.
Okay. We have some problems in here. Now, one of the biggest things that happens when you are mixing anything, and I'm talking specifically about mixing here, not recording, can happen and become a problem when a lot of the sounds that you're using are either samples or come from virtual instruments or keyboard workstations. Because reality is, in all cases, those are all samples, right? And a sample, by its very nature, is designed to make you happy straight off the bat. It's designed to sound good as soon as you press play and go, okay, cool, that's cool. But what it's not designed to do is actually sound automatically good in your mix when it sits next to everything else. So let's just go through a few of the things here that are going to be problems. Now, I'm going to go to the first one, which is this track here, which is called Altair. Now, if I solo this channel right here, and let's go to... So this is a string pad, and it's off a Yamaha keyboard. I think it was a Motif 6, and then I recreated it. Now, it's a lovely pad, right? I can imagine you saying yes, but it's going to create some problems, and here's why. If I put this back in, let's go somewhere over here, for example. Gets a bit overwhelming, and if I go back over here, I can't hear it at all. So what does this come down to? It comes down to frequencies, basically. So the first plugin I always reach for, and I mean on literally every single session, is this one right here. This is a one-band EQ. The Q10, whether it's the Q1, the Q2, the 4, the 8, or the 10, I use this a lot because the first thing that I do in any session that comes to me, or in this case, any session that I open up 20-odd years later to fix, is I get rid of all of the frequencies that I don't need, and I add a few where I don't. So I've got to make sure I don't put this under my camera, because if it's there, you guys can't see it, and that's kind of pointless. Okay. All right. So, okay, let's put everything back where it needs to be so I can see everybody. Okay. All right. So I'm going to make this a teeny weeny bit smaller, so I can see exactly where I'm doing what. And I'm going to solo this again. And okay. So there's my string. Now, what am I doing with this Q1? So I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to press play again. So all those lower frequencies, I'm getting rid of them. Now, what does that do? It's super simple. The first thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing when it comes to any kind of mix is limit yourself to 2 or 3 plugins that you know help you get where you want to be. So I like to call it into my happy place, right? And this is one of the 3 plugins I'm going to show you. So, but what I want to do now is I want to actually have a listen to it in a loop. So I'll take this and I'll just loop it for a teeny weeny little bit, and then I'm going to have the plugin out, and I'm going to listen to it really, really low. So these headphones that I have on are not, it's not blasting in my ears. So I'm going to have a listen to it, unsoloed. And this is the first of 2 or 3 problems we're going to deal with right now. Okay, I'm going to mute it. Okay. So you can hear it definitely disappear when I mute it. However, there's some frequencies in there I don't need, which is what we're doing here. So I'm going to, okay, now I'm going to turn on the plugin. Move this a tad. Now I'm going to mute it again. Put it back a bit. There we go. Beautiful. So what are we looking for? And I intentionally have me on camera, not the screen, so that you could actually listen to that. So here's what we did. What I did was I muted the actual track, right? So let's mute it for a second again so you can actually see. No strings. Bring it back. Now let's take the plugin out. Plug in back in.
It's a gift to use your mind.
And now I'm going to solo it so you can actually hear what we did. So what I did was really, really simple. I got rid of the frequencies that are not necessary. And this is actually a really big deal, because if you have, and feel free to nod at home if you relate to this, as you start to add different tracks and different instruments in a mix, sometimes you get to a point where your master fader is kind of like peaking up and up and up, and your levels are peaking up, and you're trying to put a compressor on it and bring it down, and then everything starts to sound a bit muddy and put together, and you can't define anything. One of the biggest problems for that, I mean, one of the things that creates that problem is using frequencies and instruments that are not needed. So if I play this little string again, okay, that's without the plugin. Now, those lower frequencies, anything under about 100, I don't need them. That's all I need. So by taking out all those frequencies, I'm giving room for other stuff. Now, you guys with me? I don't see any questions yet, but are the people out there? Are we listening? Are we good?
Yep.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so now let me just make sure that we're not actually, let me just get rid of that for a second. Okay. All right, beautiful. Now that should make sure that we're not actually, doubling up on stuff. Okay, on audio, I mean. So I'm getting rid of all the frequencies that we don't need. And that's a big deal, because generally speaking, the only way to make sure that your session actually has room to breathe is making sure everything on your sound stage is the same as everything on a normal stage. So, for example, the lead singer of a band is nearly always up the front of a stage at a live show. The drummer is at the back, the bass guitarist and the other guitarists are somewhere around the sides in the middle, the keyboardist is somewhere over there. If you look at the placement of the band, you usually have an idea of the importance. I like to actually place my instruments on a frequency level in exactly the same way. So the first thing I do is get rid of the frequencies that I don't need. Strings, first one. Now, there's actually another problem in this session that's actually a really big problem. And it's this track here, which is called Massive Kick. And Massive Kick is actually pretty massive. For some reason, it doesn't want to show you the wave file. But if I would you agree that's pretty massive? Yeah. Okay. So now that by itself, it's okay. But if I add the extra drum loop, now we have problems. So if I unsolo all of this, back. So we have a problem because we've got a bunch of things that are going on, and Mr. Bajaao, so it's like, so what are you hearing? What are you hearing? Are you hearing mess? Are you hearing mud? What are you hearing as the main problems?
Yes, some amount of it's a little cloudy, right? So there's a lot of things happening.
Yeah. And that's one of the problems is as people start adding stuff into a mix, it starts to clutter everything. So you have to decide what's important and make a space for it in the mix. So one of the first things you do is you do what I did with the strings, is you give it space to move. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're doing things like this is they tweak it completely with the solo button on. Now, I challenge any of you, have you ever listened to a song on the radio and gone, wow, I bet that drum sounded great soloed? It just doesn't really happen. So you have to actually make sure that you're listening to things in context. So let's take a listen to this drum. Let's go for this drum loop first. And I'm going to do a couple of quick tweaks, and then I'm going to solo it so you can hear what I did. But again, two very simple plugins. Okay, so first one. Okay, so that's the first one. Again, same deal. Get rid of those muddy frequencies. Okay, so that's the first one. And this is the second one. Let's add this in. Hey! Okay. All right, so what have I done? So there's my drums, right? First thing I do is like take this one here, is get rid of some frequencies. Now you could do this in any order, but I like to do it with the EQ first. Okay, now once I've done that, I'm going to bring in this little baby here. Now MV2 is what we call a low-level, high-level compressor. So it brings up the low dynamics and the ghost notes and can make the high ones a bit more present. So this can really be your friend regardless of what you're doing. So if I add this in, listen to those cymbals bounce. Now, I did volume match it just a bit, but not too much because I actually wanted some more presence out of it. So, okay, so there we go. All right, so now let's put it back in the mix. Let's pull them both out. I wanted those cymbals, right? So. And then with this massive kick, okay, here, the rest of the mud disappears. So, and the reason for that is, again, same deal, is if let's bypass this plugin for a second. I don't want any of those low frequencies, but in this case as well, I want to accentuate a couple of the higher ones. So it's an awful sample, but it's part of the sample of the original song. So just a bit of adjustment on the high and getting rid of all of those frequencies on the low. So if I put this back in, cleans it up. So now, but if I pull all three of those out, just too muddy, and not enough presence. Okay, let's bring him back in. Okay. So there we have, so that's the first thing, is like pull stuff out that you don't need and put stuff in that you need, but do it with really simple plugins. Q1, Q2, Q4, and I have to tell you, I'm going to use this a few times, MV2. So if we go back to my strings, okay, so I've taken out the frequencies I didn't want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this again. So let's go back to this part right here.
Piano.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to bring this up.
Guitar.
Okay. So I'm going to turn this off, and I want you. I can't tell you to do it, and I can't even see if you are doing it, but what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes, or I want you to look away from the screen, and I want you to really concentrate on just listening to the difference between when I bring up the low-level dynamics in the strings compared to when it's not there. So I'm going to turn it off first, and then I'm going to turn it on. Strings are coming in now. It just fills it, but it doesn't take up any extra space that it doesn't need. So, and again, that's because I'm focusing on getting rid of the frequencies I don't need and then accentuating the ones I do by just dynamically lifting them slightly. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's pretty key, because I think a lot of times what we would end up doing, and especially someone who's just trying out plugins, would be like just playing around with volumes. And what you end up doing is, like you said, if you start piling up stuff and just kind
Yeah.
you want to hear something, but the only way you end up, only thing you end up doing is filling up sound without
Right.
really getting clarity.
And one of the other things, and I guarantee pretty much anybody who's ever mixed a track knows about this one, is you get really excited about a song. You're mixing it and adding to it until like 2 o'clock in the morning. You think it sounds amazing. You go to sleep. You're dreaming about it. You're looking forward to pressing play on it the next morning. You press play and it sounds like crap. And that's because your ears stop listening about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the mix process, and your brain takes over and goes, I've heard all this before. I'm just going to repeat it. So you also have to give yourselves breaks, because otherwise none of this stuff in any kind of workflow makes a damn bit of difference, because you have to give your ears a break. I spend a lot of time going, I'll set a timer for myself and I'll go, okay, so I'm going to work on this for the next hour and a half. And then my timer will go off, and I'll go off and I'll walk the dog, or I'll watch puppy videos on YouTube, or I'll, do something, anything but listen to that specific track, or I'll listen to another track. Do we have any questions from anybody yet? Is there anybody typing any questions?
Let me just take a quick look.
Another thing that I have that you guys may or may not be interested in is I spend a lot of time reminding myself to listen really, really quietly. I'm going to put myself on full camera for a second. So I have a little tattoo on my wrist that's a mute signal, and it reminds me to turn it down, because I mix loud sometimes, and you've got to remember to turn it down, because you can't make decisions on sound when it's really loud. Your ears just don't let you. All right, we got any questions?
There's one question that's pretty interesting. So, should the faders be placed at unity before using plugins, or first balance the faders and then use plugins?
That's an interesting question. So it really, I mean, that's kind of a personal choice. Generally speaking, say for example, in this session, the faders are all over the place, because I've had this session for about 24 years, I guess. So I have an idea of the problems that need fixing in this, which is why it's a great one for an example. However, generally speaking, if I'm creating a brand new session, the first thing I don't want is all faders all on at unity, or all at any specific point. Generally speaking, I want to be able to bring things up to a certain level as I go and decide on the priorities of things, but I'll move faders up gradually and have a listen as I go. One of the really cool things that you can do, and pretty much every digital audio workstation has this ability, is, say for example, if I go, okay, so I'm gonna grab, say for example, all these faders right here, and I'm going to add a VCA for these selected tracks, right? So now I have a fader that brings everything up and down. And let me move that to there. So now I need to move my camera out of the way too, so you see. So now I have this fader called VCA that lets me literally move everything in my session up and down. Now, the difference between VCA or DCA, so voltage controlled amplitude, digitally controlled amplitude fader, compared to, say, a group fader would be, this one's one I haven't explained in a while. So a group will bring everything down at exactly the level and bring it down all in one group, whereas a VCA or a DCA brings everything down relative to everything else. So if one fader is lower and has less volume than another one, then it will go slower so that things are all equal. Now, I don't know about you, but the good part of a VCA to me is if you have a VCA over the entire session, once you've got all of the tracks that you want, it actually gives you a really good place to go, okay, so I have a rough mix that I'm working on. Rather than pulling down separate faders, let's pull everything down. What I don't want to do is mix to a point where everything is peaking at 0 or even -10 straight away. That to me is not a good way to work, because you're working against yourself. I don't know about you, but I generally find that that's a terrible way to work if you want to actually give yourself room to breathe in the mix.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. Another good way to think about that would be, if I head back to the session, would be, take into account most of these faders, even the higher ones, this one here, the bass. The bass is around, currently around, what is it, it's like -8-ish. It's probably one of the highest faders in the mix. And that's pretty much where I like to be. I don't like things to be up at 0. 0 is not a good place to start, because you've got nowhere to go from there. Also, if you're dealing with mastering, you're going to find that you literally, the mastering engineer is going to hate you, or if you're mastering your own stuff, you're going to hate you, because you've then got nowhere to go yourself.
There's no headroom at all.
Right, exactly. No headroom. So the other thing is, you'll see that I do have a master fader over here. And let me move my camera again so you can see. So I do have a plugin on my master, but it's always turned off until I actually need it. One of the things that I never, ever do personally, and this is a personal choice for me, is I never mix into a process. By process, I mean a plugin. I never mix into a plugin. I never mix into a compressor. Some people do, some people don't. My personal preference is I want to know that my mix can stand up for itself without having to be, overseen by something on the master bus. Because to me, from my way of thinking, especially when I'm teaching, putting a compressor or a limiter on the master bus before you've even got all your tracks in order is a bit like fixing it in the mix. It's a bit like having something there that's giving you a false sense of what the mix is going to sound like. And that's one of the things that can contribute to mud. So that's generally bad. Now, while we're talking about that, let's talk about the rest of my workflow here. So I have all of my tracks, right? So it doesn't matter what DAW I'm working in, all of the tracks are there. My vocals are nearly always either at the top or at the bottom, unless it's a really complex track and there's something more prioritizing than the vocals. And in that case, then the vocals may move and something else may be at the top, right at the top or right at the bottom. Every single session I have, though, has a vocal bus. It has a main drums bus. The vocal bus and the drums bus, because drums and vocals in anything I mix are usually the two things that I want to be able to separate and have easy access to processing all of it. And then I also have a vocal verb effects bus and a vocal delay bus. And then if I have something like multiple, if I'm working on a dance music track or something, then a lot of the time what I'll have is I'll have multiple effects buses depending on what goes. But with a song, it's always main drums. That's an auxiliary. You could call it a group if you want to, but it's an auxiliary bus. And then a vocal bus just for, in this case, Christy and her vocals. And those get processed separately and have their own sends. So if you see here, the vocal bus has, it's sending out to the delay and it's sending out to the reverb. The main drums have a plugin that you haven't heard yet that's on there. And then we also have the plugins separately on these two drums here that I can deal with as I go. So, to that note, why vocals and drums? Well, if we take a look at just the vocals and just the drums in this mix, let's go to where she's singing, shall we? Vocals, drums, and bass are pretty much the most important things in a song. Okay, so vocals. Okay, so there's the vocals. Now remember, this is with no plugins. She's got no plugins on her, and then there's the drums. So I can have both of those things in and nothing else in. Okay, so we've got those plugins. Now let's add the other main plugin to the drums, which is this one. Okay, so now let's add her main plugin. Now let's add the effect and the delay.
Save it, don't waste it.
Okay, now, so let's bring up the reverb just slightly.
Don't waste it.
So now I can go, you know what? Let's get rid of that, get rid of that.
Save it.
There's the whole session again. I want to take out the vocals. I want to take out the drums.
Save it, don't waste it.
So these are the reasons why I like multiple buses on this kind of stuff, so that I can actually decide, make key decisions on the mix and actually create potential remixes at the same time. But it helps me decide where the frequencies that are good, where the frequencies that are bad, where the frequency problems are, all within a very, very short space of time. So had you thought of it? It's a different point of view, but it's like if you make it part of your, I'm bringing you back on camera again. There you are. So one of the things that, from my point of view, is if you start and you create a kitchen for yourself that you know you can cook in, any session that comes to you, you put it into your, your own session template in your own workflow, and it's a bit like walking back into your own kitchen. There's nothing worse, in my view, than being told you're going to be cooking a 3-course meal, but you're going to be doing it in somebody else's kitchen, and we're not going to tell you where anything is. Because it
course.
makes it really
Yeah.
hard. You spend all your time trying to, okay, where's this, where's that? Whereas if you know that everything is where you put it all the time, it makes it really easy to get to. And this is one of the reasons why people like, your Chris Lord Alges, and your Tom Lord Alges and your Tony Maseratis and Eddie Kramers, etc., can mix so fast, is because they do the same thing that I do, basically, which is everything always has its own spot in the workflow. So you automatically know where to get to. Andrew Sheps and I had a conversation about this ages ago, like at 2:00 in the morning, kind of like comparing our workflows and our templates. And we both agreed that one of the most important things, rather than anything to do with processing, is making sure that, first of all, you know where everything is. So it doesn't matter what order you add it, make sure it's in the same place.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's familiar, so you know where to go to, you know what it's going to do, and what it's going to do when
Right.
you make a certain change in a certain place. Yeah, makes sense.
The other thing that this workflow makes easier is being able to solo things or mute things, mostly mute things, so that I can actually make key decisions on the frequencies of the mix. In this case, the two most important things outside of the bass are the drums and the vocals. Christie's vocal and the drums are the two driving parts of this song. So it makes sense that you want to be able to have that available so that you can actually solo it or mute it. And I say solo or mute, but for me, mostly it's mute. It's mostly, if I go back to my DAW, I want to be able to take her out if I need to. Well, that sounds bad, but not take her out, but remove her. Okay, so now one of the things that's also going to help me do is make key decisions about things that we haven't added yet, like, say, for example, the bass. So here we have the bass, okay? Say hi to the bass, people. Is everybody having a good time? Are the people actually watching? Is anybody awake still? Did everybody go to bed?
No, people.
Okay, cool. You're just shy. Okay, so here we have the bass, and this again is everything in this song except one part of guitar and her vocal was all off a Korg Triton workstation or a Yamaha Motif keyboard, I think, or off a Korg M1 keyboard. I think this bass came off a Korg M1. No, it actually says Motif 6, so there you go, I lied. Okay, so here we have the bass. Okay, so now, if I take that bass and I add the drums, two things I need to do. Let's add in the strings. There's one more piece, which is the Hammond. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm actually, this had a 1-band EQ. I'm actually going to change this one. I'm going to put a 2-band on here. Let's remove Q2. Okay. All right. Double click to make it active. Double click to make it active. Okay, so now I have 2 bands on this bass guitar. Now, so there's my bass, right? So now the first thing I want to do is I want to decide how I want to deal with these two frequencies. So I'm going to, first band is going to be high pass, second band is going to be low pass. Okay, so now I'm going to add a second plugin, and I'm going to make it the MV2, which is, again, one of my favorite little compressors. I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to squeeze it. Okay, now I'm going to pull that down. One of the things that you want to do when you're adding any kind of plugin process is make sure that you're not just making it louder and that's what you're hearing. What I want to be able to do with this plugin is I want to make it more present. I want to make it stick out more and be stronger, but I don't necessarily want it to dominate. So, okay, so that's before. Okay, so there's a small amount of difference in volume, but its perceived volume, it's stronger. Okay, cool. That's what I want. So now I've made that decision. I'm going to grab this and go back again, and I'm going to unsolo it. Okay, let's loop that bit there. Muddy. So yeah, so one of the what you're trying to do is you're trying to find those frequencies that you're not using and get rid of them. So some of those lower frequencies, we don't really need them. Now, you know, there's people out there who would say quite happily you could do that. But you'll notice, in this case, it doesn't actually make really any difference whether it's before. It doesn't really make a difference. So it's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Now, in this case, one of the things you can do is you can go, okay, well, let's squeeze it a bit more. But if I take them both out, wrong one, sorry. That one. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let's grab that there. Okay, so let's just squeeze it a bit more. Okay. All right, so if I take that out, it's stronger. Hold on one second, guys. Okay.
The front right tire.
Okay.
I was pulling out. But
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just put it in, and it's getting flat.
We have a flat tire, so
I'm gonna take your car.
okay. So life gets in the way sometimes. Okay, so now we've got the bass. So if we go back to the now, if I pull both of these out, it's too muddy. It's like what I want is I want that bass pattern, and I want to be able to do that with I can probably squeeze it a bit more, actually. Yeah, I can. So those decisions are made when I am not just soloing. Those decisions are made while I'm actually listening to the mix. Okay.
Oh, mix, yeah.
Okay, so where were we before the flat tire? We were, so we've got the massive kick, we've got the drums. So far, all I've used is literally like 3 plugins, 4 maybe, on those things that we focused on, which is a 1-band, a 2-band, an MV2, and a 4-band in one case. It's like those tools are the ones that you guys can use to really, really just do pretty much anything. Now, there is one thing, this is, if we want to solve one problem that we have, so for example, we have, let's bring up this plugin right here. So this plugin here is called Center. Now, if I have a listen to, okay, so one of the problems with this specific drum loop is that it's very out the sides, and it can be that can make it perceived a bit busy. So what I did was I added center.
Narrow it down.
So it takes it from being out there and puts it back there. It's a rather large difference. And it makes a huge difference to how you actually mix the rest of the track. But again, we're dealing with plugins that are not complex. We're dealing with, so far, every single plugin has been 1 to 2 faders, 1 to 2 different bands. And I don't know about you, but that to me is one of the things that I find makes the world of difference when it comes to finding the sweet spot on how the session works and how your session is going to work for you, is using really, really simple tools. I think there's a misconception out there sometimes that the people at the top of the industry are using different tools than we use at home, which is really not even slightly accurate. I use the same tools that you do, Andrew Sheps, CLA, TLA, Tony Maserati, Manny Marroquin. They all use the same tools. It's how you use them.
Yeah.
And I generally find that if the first thing you do is you open up a plugin that looks like that, unless you're really, so hold on, looks like that, unless you're really, really clear on exactly what it is you're trying to do, you don't need to go straight to an Abbey Road plugin that has multiple things happening. You can go, okay, right, let's start with my 1-band and my 2-band EQs. Let's start with my simple compressors. Let's start with things that help me shape the mix. Where things like the TG mastering chain from our Abbey Road collection comes in really handy is for shaping the overall sound of the different buses, in my case, and the actual mix itself. But
Sure.
I
So while you're
generally,
working with individual tracks, you mean it would be a lot easier to do it this way?
I beg your pardon, I missed that, sorry.
I'm saying, so what you meant was like while using or working on individual tracks, or while you're still working on the mix, it would make a lot more sense to
Yeah.
stick to a simpler.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, because the other thing is, remember that when you're actually working on a session and working out where it's going to go, most of the decisions that you're making that are based on frequencies are usually subtractive. It's usually pulling frequencies out rather than adding things in. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people make a mistake, and it can slow them down, is going, okay, right, so I'm going to add that plugin, it sounds really cool. I'm going to add that one, it sounds really cool. but it doesn't actually help the entire mix. The first thing I want to do is make everything sit well together so I can hear everything at a really low volume. Once I've done that, then I can start adding in the source. So it's not until that point, for example, that I'm going to go, I made any of the decisions what delay and what reverb. Now,
Sure.
while we're talking about solutions, let's talk about vocals for a sec. How are we going on time? And any more questions right now?
Yeah, we have a couple. Actually, I just wanted to interrupt you and ask you because you just like kind of mentioned the thing itself. So there's a question here by Mr. Sahu who says we sometimes trick ourselves to thinking that specific tweak or effect makes the sample sound better when all it's doing is making it louder.
It is.
So how do we know the actual difference?
So so pretty much every sample, and it doesn't matter whether it's on that keyboard behind me, or whether it's a sample in a VI. Sound designers create sounds for us, right? So, and all those sounds are recorded, mixed, and mastered before they even get to us. Now, that means that you have to be super careful about what processes you're adding to them so that you're not just making them louder, but also B, depending on what you're adding, you might actually be bringing up any existing noise floor and noise particles on that specific sample and making it messier. So one of the things that comes into play with this a lot is being very, very present of what you actually have. Paying attention to your waveforms. Perfect example, right? So let me, you're still in my head and you're still in their head, but my DAW is on the screen. So let's take, for example, this drum loop, right? So this drum loop on the screen right now, let me move my camera out of the way a bit more. So this drum loop on the screen, if you know anything about dynamics at all, then you're going to look at this and go, wow, that was compressed hard. If you don't know anything about dynamics, then let me tell you, this is not a dynamic piece of audio. This is a very highly compressed drum loop. This is the way this drum loop came to me from, I think this drum loop was by BT, Brian Transo, from his original samples CD back in 1997 or 98. Really highly compressed. Now, therefore, that's one of the reasons why you have to be really careful about what you actually do to it. So the first thing I do is not so much add, is I take away. It's like I want to get rid of all those lower frequencies so that the only thing I'm really compressing or bringing up any compression on is the frequencies that I want. What I don't want to do is just put a compressor or a limiter over the whole thing and then put a reverb on it or an analog modeling effect. I don't want any of that because all that's going to do is bring out artifacts in the sample that may not be present in where it is, but it's 16-bit, 44K, mixed and compressed and mastered before it even gets to you. So you have to be very careful what you do with these samples when you're putting them in your session, and how you deal with them. There's only two pieces of audio in this session that really are what I would say dynamic, and that's one of them. So this was a piece of guitar that Christy played while she was singing, and it sounds like this. So that's a dynamic piece of audio, right? So this piece of audio actually gives me a fair bit of leeway on what I can do with it. This one, on the other hand, does not. This is a sample. So this one right here. That's a sample off a keyboard, played off a keyboard, and you can see that there's no dynamics to it. So one of the things that comes up a lot is people will ask me, they'll say, how come you don't have plugins on every single track? If you put plugins on every single track, then you are setting yourself up for failure. Unless you are really clear on what every single one of them is doing and how it's doing it. This track here is a sample on a keyboard. If I do anything with this, I'm going to take frequencies out. However, it's only high frequencies in the first place, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to put it down there. However, the only reason this guitar was in here, and this is where tricks of the trade come in, is to back up this one right here. So if I play, let's unsolo the session for a second and go back to. Can you hear the strummed guitar? Not really. It's there, but you can't really hear it.
Not in the mix now.
So I'm going to fix that with one plugin. This one right here. So I'm now going to play that again, and I'm going to turn this plugin on. Now you can hear it. Turn it off again. So that's the kind of thing that you can do that on. And I can put this plugin is amazing, and it's a really heavy process. So you want to be very, very careful about what you're putting it on. But if you're putting it on a guitar that's DI'd or recorded in for an amp, absolutely knock yourself out. Because you've got lots of dynamic range to play with, so you're not going to mess yourself up. This guitar in the background is literally just backing up the one with the CLA on it. So if I take this, okay, so there's that. Now if I add in, remember this one sounded like this. So let's call this one a backup guitarist, because if I put this one back in, now this guitar in the back just adds to this front one. When I mute it, you'll hear. I love it. I love stuff like this because it's what brings your session together. But you have to know, why you're doing things. So one of the last things I want to get on, unless pick me up if there's any questions on the way. But one of the things that I do want to talk about is Christy and her vocals. So when you're dealing with vocals, everybody loves a reverb, everybody loves a delay. However, a reverb can actually be sometimes detrimental to a mix, because effectively what you're doing with a reverb is you're going, I really like that frequency. I'm going to repeat it thousands of times within the next 5 seconds. So you have to make sure that the way you're using the reverb and how you're EQing the reverb gives you room to breathe and isn't just repeating frequencies and muddying things up. One of the best ways that I like to deal with that is actually by adding a reverb and a delay and choosing how I layer them. So if I go, okay, so let's go tiny again. Let's find some Christy. There we go. Okay, come on. Okay, so this Christy has an amazingly individual voice. It's exceptional. And have a listen. First of all, have a listen to the room. Remember, this was recorded in a living room.
Dive into open fires. Protection is a given virtue when courage is existing. It's a gift to use your mind. Save it, don't waste it.
You can hear how loud she has her headphones too.
Negativity sticks like coffee stains on my clothes. Smells forever like I'm lost in deadbeat restaurant love.
Okay, so that was added in afterwards. Obviously, she didn't sing it like that. So how do I make that sound good? Well, it's really easy. Firstly, you're not going to hear a lot of that background noise in the mix. I just lost my friend from Bajaao. Hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully you guys are still all there. So I want to... are you back? You're back! Yay!
Yeah.
So I want to be able to add some effects to this vocal that work. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is go, okay, right, so I'm going to add a delay. And let's bring that here. It's a bit too big. There you go, 100. Right, so... Mr. Bajaao, can you mute yourself? It's like I can hear myself back through your end.
Oh, sure.
Thanks. So here I have a delay. This is my favorite delay. And one of my favorite things to do with this delay is use ping pong. Now, this is a really simple setting. And if you go under the presets and you go classics, there it is, ping pong. And what it does is it bounces things off the left speaker and the right speaker. It's a really cool way of doing things. I have it set to the BPM of the song, and I have it set to quarter note so that things are nice and rounded. So if I add this in now, let's add in, okay. So
Dive into open fires. Protection is a given virtue when courage is existing.
okay, so one of the first things you'll hear is, yes, there's bouncing off left and right. The other thing you'll hear is it's very, very defined, and that can be a bit of a problem. So I'm just going to, let's bring that up so I can show you both sends. So I'm going to bring my vocal delay up just a bit more. Let's play.
Dive into open fire.
Now, if I put that back in the mix,
Given virtue when courage is existing. It's a gift to use your mind. Save it, don't waste it.
okay. Sounds cool by itself. In the mix, it can be a bit of a nightmare. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get around this. The first one is doing what I'm doing here, which is I've got a delay, but I also have, ooh, that's big. Let's go back. So I also have a reverb. And I'm going to go, you know what, let's go to the preset browser. Let's go artists. I'm going to go to my friend Dave Darlington's folder. Dave Darlington has this really cool Renaissance verb setting called Beautiful Whole. And I'm going to kick that and bring that in. Now, one of the things that you can do with our reverbs and delays, with H delay, you've got high pass and low pass. With this, you've got EQ, which I can go to my EQ section, and I'm just going to grab my first band. I'm just going to bring it all the way down here. So again, I have this little, like a high pass, low pass, effectively, on the reverb. And then you'll see over here, if I move my camera, you'll see in my sends, I have a vocal send on the vocal bus, a vocal send for the delay, and one for the verb. I'm going to pull the delay one back down because I was using that as an example. I'm going to keep the vocal verb where it is for now. So I'm just going to press play with just the delay first again. Okay, it'll probably help if I do that where there's some vocals.
When courage is existing,
Two defined.
it's a gift to use your mind.
Now let's add in the reverb.
Save it, don't waste it. Negativity sticks like coffee stains on my clothes. Smells forever like I'm lost in deadbeat restaurant love.
Okay. So now we have a bit of a mix. So now if I go and I add it all back in, let's go back here.
Open fires. Protection is a given virtue when courage is existing. It's a gift to use your mind. Save it, don't waste it.
Now if I pull them both out,
Negativity sticks like coffee stains on my clothes. Smells forever like I'm lost in deadbeat rest.
okay, let's go back to this bit again.
Negativity sticks like coffee stains on my clothes. Smells forever like I'm lost in deadbeat restaurant love.
Now, this is where the vocal bus comes in. Remember I was talking about the vocal bus? Let's play that again.
Negativity sticks like coffee stains on my clothes. Smells forever like I'm lost in deadbeat restaurant love.
Okay, so it gives me the ability to go, you know what, I just want to bring the vocals down and have everything in the vocals bring down. Now, this is where I want to bring in two more plugins. Do we have time? Can I keep going for a bit? Is anybody still there? Now I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, we definitely have another 15-20 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. Everybody happy out there? The questions seem a bit quiet. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to put this on my master now. So this is, but I'm also going to put another plugin, which is a, meter bridge. There we go. Okay. All right. So the meter bridge, the Abbey Road TG meter bridge works with the Abbey Road plugin that it's there. So I've got this plugin on my master, right? And I've just activated it. So, but I don't want that up there right now. What I do want though is the meter. Now, one of the things that I like to be able to make sure I'm doing in my mix is I want to make sure that when I'm dealing, where shall I put me? I'll put me over there for now. Yeah, that'll do. I want to make sure that what I'm listening to sounds good, but I want to make sure that there's no one specific part outside of the drums in a song like this that are prominent, that are kind of like going through and peaking where they shouldn't be. And in this track, it really is the drums. So I'm going to go back to this part here where there's vocals and drums. And I'm going to pay attention to the levels. -10. Okay. Okay, so now let's look at my ratio on the compressor. Let's bring it down a bit so it hits a bit less. I don't want any makeup. I want a bit less spread, so... Okay, now let's go back to that. Alright, so let's go. All right, so now if I pull that out,
Smells forever like I'm lost in deadbeat restaurant love.
okay, so here's one of the things I want to make sure that I'm getting across. If you have a plugin on your master fader, and you bypass that plugin and suddenly your mix disappears, or your mix gets suddenly louder, then there's something vastly wrong in your session that you need to rectify, which is why I don't like mixing into a compressor or a limiter, because it gives you a false sense of security. So if I press play on this, I have nothing on my master bus right now except the meter, which doesn't really count because it's just a meter. But if I press play, I'm happy with that. Now, all I want from the Abbey Road is a bit of glue.
Smells
Okay, so
forever
let's
like
go.
I'm lost in
Okay, let's add it. Okay, so
negativity sticks like coffee stains on
just a bit of glue, but there's no vast difference in,
forever like I'm lost in
The
deadbeat
character of the
restaurant.
sounds itself.
huh?
There's no massive change in the character of the sounds
Right,
itself.
which is what you want. So
Yeah.
if there's a massive change in the character, then it means that there's something else in the session that you really have to go back and work out what's going on. Now, one of the biggest tips I can give you when it comes to solving problems in sessions, where you find that you put something on the master or you get to the end and everything's really muddy, is listen to it at the most quiet volume you possibly can and close your eyes and have a listen to what frequencies are prominent and which ones aren't, and try and ignore what the instruments are and have a listen to what's popping. No decisions can be made when something is listening at a loud volume, because your brain and ears make a really good compressor, and everything sounds good loud. The key is that everything sounds good loud, but it's going to sound even better if you mix it low. When I mix something, I mix it at a level that's just above audible, because I'm mixing for the lowest common denominator, which means you have to mix something so that you can be heard above life. It's like music on the radio has to survive with traffic noise, people talking, babies crying, office noise, sirens, all the day-to-day things of life. If we can't be heard above that, and people can't hear it and go, "Oh my God, I love that song, turn it up," then we've failed. So you have to make sure that you're mixing it for everybody else. You're not mixing it for you and your speakers.
Sure.
Another perfect example of that is the fact these headphones here. So these headphones here, these are the headphones that came with my Samsung phone. And I'll use these as reference headphones all the time, because the reality is most people listening to music these days are not listening through Sony's or Audio Technicas or anything high end. They're listening through Beats or the ones that came with their headphones. And quite frankly, Beats are terrible. It's just good branding, but yeah. So you have to make sure that you can hear things through what people are listening through. Yeah,
Does make
it's
sense.
it does. Yeah. So we got any questions in the chat?
Not any currently. I had one question, just as a very simple
I love
thing, as a
questions.
vocalist and for someone else who could be possibly doing this. So very often I try and see, like you said, you don't mix with other plugins in them, like in your mastering chain and stuff.
Right.
But what about while tracking? Is it a good idea for someone to have a certain kind of plugin, like maybe a compressor or a delay or a reverb already in there, or does that also give him that the person a
It
false sense of?
It's a good question. So it depends what you're doing it for. If you're talking about a plugin on the track that the singer is listening to, then that's totally fine, because that's helping them get the vibe. It's
Yeah.
helping them. It's helping them feel in the moment. So, having a good reverb or a good delay or a mix of those things go to their headphones is a really good way of doing it. I'm going to give you. I'm going to send you this file so that you can share it with people. I'm just going to go back to the DAW quickly. So we have this amazing plugin called Studio Rack. So I'm going to bypass my delay and I'm going to bypass my reverb and I'm going to add Studio Rack on one of those two effects buses, right? So now Studio Rack is a plugin that enables you to have a very complex chain of plugins all within one insert. Now, the cool thing about this plugin is it's not just 8 plugins. You can have a plugin followed by plugins, and save it as one preset, or you can have, you can create a parallel split and create your own multi-band or parallel splits with plugins. However, I have this one really cool preset called the MPA Vocal Delay Recipe. Ta-da! Right? So, and this is what it does. So let me put it there for a second, and let's just tweak this for a second. So, what do I have it on? I have it on the vocal delay. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the vocal verb completely, just so it doesn't. Okay. All right, so now, I usually use this for dance music, but it's a very cool way of doing it. So this is one of the ways that I love to do reverbs and delays, is I will layer them. So in this case here, I have a delay, but I wanted it to be soft. So I have a reverb, right? And the reverb goes then into H delay with a really long tail. So let's pull that feedback back down. Again, it's to the BPM of the song. And in this case, I'm going to a half note speed, so it's a bit slower. But that H delay then goes into another reverb with the same low pass, high pass EQ I told you to do. That then goes into a one band with a high pass, and that goes into a MV2. So again, I'm using the same simple plugins that I showed you, but I'm using them in a different way. Now, having a reverb go into a delay into a reverb gives us a really interesting effect. So if I go, okay, so if I solo my vocal bus, and let's go back and find a bit of vocal.
Don't try too hard, carelessly dive into.
Okay, let's make it a bit fast.
Protection is a given virtue when courage is existing.
So what it does,
It's a gift to use your mind.
it keeps, there's no reverb on the vocal. The only reverb is on the delay. So the vocal itself stays really, really present.
Don't try too hard, carelessly dive into open fires. Protection is a given virtue.
So if I pull out the effects now,
Courage is
the vocal's not affected at all. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm actually using effects, really simple ones. Studio Rack is free. Any of your customers can have Studio Rack. Using Renaissance Verb, H delay, another Renaissance Verb, a one-band EQ, an MV2, which is everything from the Gold Bundle upwards, to create something that truly sounds like, it just kills it. But it keeps the vocal right there in center, so that it doesn't kind of like sound like it's in a toilet, and it can stay nice and present in the mix. You're back on camera.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Actually, that does make sense, because then the body of the vocal itself isn't touched and gotten spacey in any way, but you do still have the effects that you want on
Right.
on the same vocal part.
And that's one of the
I'm gonna
reasons
do
why
that
I want to. So I'm going to send you this preset for anybody, so that way anybody who has any of those plugins,
Yeah, sure.
your camera disappeared again. So anybody has any of those plugins, I'm going to send you that preset so you can use this. This is a now the other cool thing about, and this is be the last thing I talk about with this, when we come to workflow and we come to how we deal with sound in our workflow, I'm going to go to another version of it. Now, this is another version of it, and I'm utilizing what we call macros. Now, what this allows me to do is actually control different parts of the plugins with knobs. So in this case, if I go MV2, for example, when the MV2 knob actually controls and also controls the output. So that way, as I'm squeezing, I'm also volume matching. So with the verb after this knob here, it controls the time of the delay and the wet and dry, and the pre-delay reverb. This knob here controls the wet dry, and then this one here, the feedback, controls that knob there. So I can actually access all of these plugins without actually going into the plugins. And then to adjust the killing low, that's exactly what that does. So now, why would I want to do this? But the simplest reason for doing this is it's a bit like when you work on a console. When you're not looking at something in great detail, your ears tend to do more work. So rather than looking deeply at a delay and kind of like knowing, my brain and my eyes and my ears are all telling myself that I'm making adjustments, having a knob that simply does it actually helps my ears do a teeny bit more work.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Simplifying it.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think the moral of the story here is you got to keep things simple. Spend time initially on using like Q1, MV2, Q2, and a simple compressor, and just concentrate on removing all of the problems that you have before you actually start going, okay, so let's add things like CLA guitars, etc., so that you can actually start building up on it. You have to get rid of all the frequencies that you don't need before you can really start building on what you do need. Otherwise, you've got nothing to build on. Exactly. Yeah, it's basically cleaning your kitchen surface before you put flour on it, or before you eat off it. Now, there was one more thing. Yes. So let's talk quickly. Just one more thing about. I talked about it for a second. This little fader here, my VCA. So where does that come in handy? It comes in handy when I've got say, for example, let's have a listen to the session. Okay. So it pulls everything down. So if I decide, let's pre-compression, okay. Okay, so now if I pull this VCA down, so this is pulling it down before anything hits any process at all. So I get an idea of exactly what's going on. And then I can decide, okay, so there's a guitar in there somewhere. Like this guitar here, for example, it's like, but also if you look at my master fader, there's no point outside the drums that anything's really affecting it. And I kind of keep an eye on that. Now, even when I get to my vocal, if I put my vocal back in, let's put Christy back in.
It's hard to compensate for when the mind breaks. When will I close my eyes and learn to realize I'm done with this?
Okay, now let's bring the effect up a bit.
Naturally.
Okay, so now what I can do is I can actually, okay, so let's bring up MV2. Let's go back to that point.
It's hard to compensate for when the mind breaks. When will I close my eyes?
Go in and tweak if I want to.
To realize I'm done with this positivity. It flows.
I need to make the change again that I did in the other one. Let's take it to quarter. Now, the only other thing I need to do then is go, okay, right, so I'm happy with the mix. Let's add in the compressor.
Try too hard, carelessly dive into open fires. Protection is a given virtue when courage is existing. It's a gift to use your mind. Save it, don't waste.
Now you'll notice I'm not actually looking at it. I'm just listening to it.
Activity sticks like coffee stains on my clothes.
And that's kind of important to me because one of the things that I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm not making decisions based on things that my eyes are telling me. I want to make sure I'm making decisions based on what my ears are telling me. You can spend way too much time in a digital audio workstation making your eyes make the decisions, and it doesn't help. We make tools that help you pretty much go from 0 to hero. And a lot of those tools, we have over 300 plugins, but a lot of the best ones, especially when you're starting to create a session from scratch or whether you're starting to clean up, are the simple ones and the ones that are the industry standards, like the Q10, the MV2, the Renaissance compressors, and a really good meter. Those are the ones that, to me, really count. Now, that I think I've gone over an hour by like half an hour. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's been amazing. You're more than welcome to continue. But yeah, I get your point of the simplicity of leaving things the way. I think I compare it to maybe like a pedal board as a guitar player or someone like that would be like a pedal board with a bunch of pedals versus a processor or an Axe Effects which has like a ton of things in there.
Right.
But yeah, just turning a couple of knobs on a just a distortion pedal and a compressor pedal could give you the same kind of effect
I think
without having to go through a million parameters on a digital.
exactly. But and you know, and presets are most definitely your friend.
Yeah.
The thing that really counts though here is the fact that, you know, if you're going to use a preset, even with something as simple as this plugin, which by the way, this is literally, it's one of our oldest compressors and it's also my favorite compressor. I can never talk about this plugin enough. Presets are your friend. However, presets are sometimes seen as, it's a cheat. It's not a cheat, it's a starting point. We've put a lot of effort into our presets to help you get where you want to be. So one of the key things with any preset, though, is tweaking it to your sound. Perfect example. So again, my mate Dave Darlington has this really wonderful preset. Dave Darlington, Beautiful Hall, right? So Beautiful Hall. It's an amazing preset. This is a really, really cool reverb. However, I generally like to, you'll see here on the screen, it says MPA, Beautiful Hall. The first thing I do, if I like a preset, is I will save it with my initials at the beginning of it and any tweaks I have. That way I know what it is, where it came from, but I know that it's my tweak. So that, my friends, is pretty much the advice from me today. I think I've overloaded everybody enough, don't you?
Yeah, but I think it's not overload. I think I'm going to be able to go back home, take a look at this session again, and then open up my Waves plugins and then try out a few things for sure. I mean, the Studio Rack is something that I will definitely check out. I've heard about it. I've seen a
Studio
couple
Rack
of
is
demos and things like
amazing.
that before, but yeah, I haven't tried it out myself. So I think it's definitely something I'll try out for sure.
One of the things about Studio Rack is you have all of this amazing. So for example, let's go. Let me open up a Studio Rack here. So here we have Studio Rack. One of the things that you have is you have all of these different artists have contributed to it. So everybody from Alan Mayerson, who's a god, to Billy Bush, to Chris Baseford, to Count, Damian Lewis, Dave Darlington, Devin Townsend, etc., etc. The list goes on. Lou Diaz. These people have all contributed a lot of presets. And a lot of these presets are really complex. So, for example, Tony Maserati, lead Vox. If we go into that preset, we start with Kramer HLS, then it goes to a de-esser, then it goes to a Abbey Road TG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it goes into a parallel split with different frequencies for the reverb, and then it goes into a Renaissance EQ. This is complex stuff. So that kind of chain reaction that you have the ability to take advantage of all of these users, it's really cool stuff.
Yeah, sounds interesting for sure.
So the questions have been a bit quiet, but hopefully next time people will have a few up their list. You know what we should do one of these times? What we should do is ask your clients to, maybe submit a session, and I'll use one of your guys' sessions and we'll go through one of those sessions, so it's not something I've heard before.
Sounds good. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan to do.
I'm totally happy to do that.
All right, MPA. Definitely an amazing session. Let's just end today with one final bit of a question, though. It's actually something that we could actually end this with. As a beginner, mixing seems pretty intimidating at first.
Mhm.
Any suggestions on how to just get started?
Yeah. So when you start mixing, one of the first things to know is it's really hard in this day and age to actually make a mistake, because you have, in digital audio workstations, you have multiple levels of undo. So my advice is, don't hesitate, just jump in and actually make what you may perceive as mistakes, because you have to learn what different processes and what different things do. You need to understand, okay, oh my God, that makes that reverb sound terrible. Why? And dig in and have a listen and have a mess around. Create sessions that literally are there specifically just to explore different processes, whether it's the plugins built into a DAW like this one, Studio One, or whether it's Pro Tools or Cubase or whatever else. There's a lot of tools built in, but there's also a lot of tools that we have that can really, really help you. But to learn how they work, you have to be able to dig in and really, really mess with them and intentionally try and break stuff. One of the first things that happens when we launch a new plugin is it gets sent to me, and the first thing I think is, okay, how can I break this? Because I want to twist knobs, I want to work out what's going on and see what the reaction is. And that helps me learn more about myself, my ears, but also about the tools I'm using.
Definitely.
one of the most important things to understand is that there is zero difference between you who are starting out and learning about mixing music and somebody at the top like an Andrew Sheps or a Tony Maserati, other than years. Tony Maserati regularly spends a couple of hours every few days just literally just going through plugins and seeing what does what. And then he'll save a preset and say, okay, that's kind of cool. That's kind of weird. I'll save that for that time. So you have to put time in, especially at the beginning, to really work out what things do, so that
What?
you
Because
actually
it might not actually serve the purpose that you're throwing for right now. Maybe not for this song, but you could always have the memory of, okay, this did that the last time
yeah.
I tried it. Maybe try it here.
Yeah,
Makes
because when it comes down to it, especially if you're going to be mixing for more than yourself and you're going to be mixing for a client, or you're going to be mixing in, say, post-production or anywhere where there's somebody sitting behind you, you have to learn how to mix fast. So you have to be able to make split decisions on the fly so that you can make sure that you keep your job, for starters, whether it's just with one
Yeah.
client or whether it's in a studio. One of the things that you don't have the luxury of when you've got a client, I mean, there's a couch right here. And there are times where sometimes there are artists who I'm working with who will come in for one of the final mixes. I never let anybody in here for the final mix, but they'll come in here for one of the final mixes, and they're sitting right there. You can't spend your time going, okay,
Let's try this. Let's see what
let's
that
try
does.
this. It's like you have to know, okay, I need to pull some low end out of this kick drum, and you need to know which tools you are comfortable using. So those are the first things. It's the same whether you're learning a martial art, or whether you're learning to cook, or whether you're learning your way around a digital audio workstation. You have to make sure that you're familiar with the tools and what they do in each scenario, so that you have the ability to go to them when you need them.
Mix. Yep.
That's
That sounds great.
That's pretty much it.
All right, MPA, it's been an absolute pleasure. I
No,
hope
it has. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to doing this again the next time. And
Oh, me
yeah,
too. And don't forget,
maybe a
guys,
call.
make sure you buy your plugins through these guys, because putting sessions on like this for you is they care about you. They care about you as or people passionate about audio and your music. And so, yeah, these guys will look after you.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you next time. And hopefully, I'll have a little bit more input by using some more plugins. I kind of shy away from like the person said there. It's a little intimidating, so
No,
I
it can
try
be.
and track
Yeah.
myself and then bounce it off to somebody else to take care of that from there. But yeah, I'm gonna try and give it a little bit of a go.
So the other thing which I'm
Yeah,
gonna do is I'm gonna send you a link that you can share with all your viewers out there. We have a free mixing course that
All right.
actually has sessions that you can download for free, as well as so that way you've got some material that you can actually work with and destroy, that's not your own material, and
Sure.
actually learn as you go.
That'll be incredible. I mean, a lot of people would not have the access to say a sample of a particular keyboard or something
We
like
got
that, which
that.
you
We
might
got
have.
that. I'll
Yeah.
send you a link so you can send it out to everybody.
That sounds awesome, Michael. It's been totally fun.
Nope.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
call this a night today here in India. And what's the time out there in Miami for you right now?
The time right here is 12:15 on Friday, just past midday. So, and now I have to go and
Yeah.
find out what my wife is doing with my car, because she has a flat tire in hers. And so,
Well, best of luck to your Friday afternoon.
all right, beautiful. Much love to everybody. MPA
Likewise,
out. Look
Michael.
forward to seeing you guys next time.
Yeah, take care.
Take care.
Have a lovely weekend.